for all of her help in ELOIS Sharp as well. And thank you all for coming out and attending this online program, Set Big Goals, Get Big Results. And this is part of a series of programs that's put on by the ACRL University Library Section Professional Development Committee. And if you stick around at the end, I'll give you some information. We have some upcoming programs in January, February, and March, and so I'll give you some information about those. Also at the end, I'll send out a short little assessment, like 3 or 4 questions, if you could take the time to answer that. I appreciate that. And also I'll send you a link to some handouts and some more information, including a PowerPoint slide and what eventually the recording of this program, the page that'll be on. The program is being recorded. Everybody who registered will receive a link to that recording, and I'll embed that in the page, the link that I send out with all the handouts as well. We're going to have the presentation, then we're going to have a question and answer session. So if you want to, you can put your questions into the chat box, which is down in the bottom right-hand part of your screen. As we go along, I won't answer them as we go along, but I'll look back at the end and see if there's any questions posted, or you can just wait to the end when we do questions, and you can post them into the chat box then, okay? So we'll just go ahead and get started. So my name is Jason Martin. I'm the Associate Dean here at Middle Tennessee State University at the Walker Library. And so this kind of personal development, productivity, goal setting, all this kind of stuff, this has been sort of a pet project of mine for a while. And I thought that I could share some of this with you, what I've done for those of you who are interested and like to talk about these kinds of things as well. And so goals has been something that's been a big interest of mine for a while. And, you know, I used to go to these different goal workshops and everything, and they would always talk about these SMART goals. And you've probably heard of SMART goals. Typically it stands for specific, measurable, attainable, results-oriented, and time-bound, something along those lines. And so these are very specific, discrete kinds of goals. And the thinking is always in these kinds of goal workshops that these SMART goals are really great, and any kind of like big sort of generic goal isn't very good because it doesn't have all these SMART attributes to it. And so I used to have all these SMART goals, and you know, it just didn't really get me anywhere. You know, you can burn 10 calories in 1,000 directions. You can burn a lot of calories. It's not going to get you anywhere. And that's kind of how I feel about SMART goals. They have a place in all of this, and we'll talk about that later on. But, you know, unless you have this big overarching goal or goals that you're trying to reach and trying to get to, all these specific little actions don't really amount to very much. And really, you know, goals really shouldn't be this kind of, again, discrete kind of activity-specific action. It should really be, you know, where we want to go in life, the direction you want to take your career. Goals are a journey, and you know, just like any journey, it's arriving at the destination is really great, but it's what you learn along the way, who you become on that journey, and enjoying the trip is far more important than what the actual outcome is. And we can really only do this with big goals, with these big giant goals that we're going to talk about. You know, these big goals, you know, when we set big goals, you know, giant, huge, gigantic goals, we challenge ourselves. You know, we change our lives for the better. We do things we never thought we could do. We experience things we never thought we would experience. We develop really important skills along the way. And we learn about ourselves and who we are and what we can do and sort of what we're made of. And these are big results. And again, we can only get these with these big goals. And they should be big, and they should be a little bit scary, you know, for what they're going to challenge us and what they're going to allow us to do. But the thing is, a lot of people might want to do this. They want to set these big goals and they want to go somewhere, but they really don't know what it is that they want to do or where they want to go. And then they really don't know, even if they knew that, how they could go about kind of achieving all these things and putting this into motion. It's a little too much for them. So, because there's 100 ways you could take your career, 1,000 ways you could take your life. So what we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about some ways that we can develop some options, that we can narrow down our choices, that we can get on a path, and then once we get on that path, how can we go about getting towards that end result? How we can go about achieving those goals? Choosing the direction and the path is one thing, but staying on it and getting towards the end is a whole other thing. So what we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about options, planning, investing, and enjoying. And this is what I call, the OPI method. And I know this is a little bit forced and it's a little bit probably over cutesy, but I got kind of obsessed with coming up with some kind of acronym for this presentation, and I ended up coming up with OPI. And there he is. He's kind of like GPAW. This is kind of corny, but I think this is a good way as we go along to kind of keep in mind and keep track of where we're going and what we're going to do. So first, we're going to talk about options. And before you can set about changing your life with these big goals, you really need to kind of prime the pump and put yourself in a state to create as many options as possible for these big goals. And we're going to talk about some activities that get your brain into this goal creation mode. You don't have to do all of these things that I'm going to talk about. You can do some of them, one of them, whatever works best for you. But all of these things really work to kind of help you get to thinking about where you want to go in life and what it is that you'd like to do. And the first thing is to grade the areas of your life and your work. And examine those different areas. And you can break down those areas however it is that you want. For your life, you could be about, say, like physical health, mental health, emotional, and financial. For your work, it could be things like, professional responsibilities, research, and service. It's up to you how you want to divide this up and what areas that you want to look at. And then what you want to do is just be honest, with yourself, looking over those things and thinking about what it is that you do and where you're at now and where you might like to be. You give yourself a grade in those areas, 1, poor, 5 is excellent, where in between, or an A to an F. Just be honest about where it is that you are right now in those different areas. And then think about what it is, not just what that you need to change, but why you need to change it. And the why is really the important part here. There's all kinds of things that you could do to improve those various areas of your life, and there's all kinds of ways you could do it. But the why, everything flows from the why. Okay, with a strong enough why, we can achieve whatever goal we want. How we're going to achieve what we want to achieve, it all flows from why we want to do that. If we have a really strong why, everything else is going to be a lot easier and going to help us to flow from that. So take some time to think about that. You grade it. You think about, well, you know what, let's say, in personal life, I'm good physical health and mental, I'm in good shape, but I really want to improve my relationships with other people. Maybe I want to get a bigger base of friends. Maybe I want to, settle down and get a significant other. However, so sit down and think about why it is that you want to do that. Don't just, because everybody else does, it's not a very good why. But really what that's going to mean to you if you're able to achieve that goal and do those kinds of things, why that's important to you and how that's going to help you in your life. Next, think about what are your guiding values in your life and in your work. What are your life priorities? What are the things that in your life and in your work that are most important to you? And make a list. Make a list of your values that guide your life and your work. Make a list of your priorities. And don't stop to think about it. Don't take a long time to ruminate or whatever. Just sit down and just write what comes into your head. And you can come back to the list of a couple of days or whatever and add some more things that you might have thought about. But just really sit down and get all that stuff out and just think about it. And then, read through those. And what kind of values on there could you group together that are similar? And if you group them together, what would you call them? What name would you give that grouping? The same thing with priorities. put them together, and what kind of name would you give those priorities? And look at that and say, what does that tell you about yourself? What does those values say about you? Do they lead you in a particular direction? Are you happy with those values? Are you happy with those priorities? If you're not, then you may step back and say, well, how can I cultivate the kinds of values and priorities that would make me happy and would take me in the kind of direction that I want to go, considering the areas in my life that I want to improve and want to change for the better. Next, sit down and think about some personal characteristics and traits of you that are your strengths. What about you that you think is really great? Everybody can sit down and talk about, oh, I don't like this, I don't like that. What about you is just awesome? Sit down and write that out. Don't be shy. Don't be modest. Nobody else is going to read this. You could put everything down from, I'm a hard worker to I sing really great in the shower, whatever it is. Nobody's going to see this list unless you want to share it with other people. And be honest with yourself, celebrate yourself, and really put down all those things that you think are strengths that are great things about you. And put down some big achievements as well. Did you run a 10K? Did you get an article published? Get married? Whatever. Put those kind of big achievements down in there as well, because those reflect you as well, and those say a lot about you too. Again, like I said, don't think about it. Just sit down and write. And then once you're done, group those kind of traits and characteristics and strengths together. Again, what do they say about you? When you look at that, what does that mean to you? And where do you think you go and what you could do with those kinds of things? Okay. Oops, just mention that. A work journal. So a lot of people know all the things they don't like, especially when it comes to work. Like, I don't like having to write an annual report. I don't like having to do this. I don't like having to do that. Very few people are able to sit down and tell you what it is they actually like to do, or what it is that they're good at, what kind of things get them into a flow state. So take a few weeks, a month to keep a work journal or an activity journal, activities that you do in your time off on your weekends or after work in your free time. And just list the work that you do and rate it on some kind of scale of a 1 to 5 kind of scale. 1, man, I just didn't like doing that. 5, I love doing that. How did that work make you feel? Did it make you feel energized? Did it make you feel tired? Tired in a good way or a bad way, because you can be tired out from really pouring your mind and your energy and your heart into something. That's a great kind of feeling of tired, or tired in that this really drained me. This took every ounce that I had to get through that. Is there work that really gets you focused? Is there work that you do or activities that you do that you're kind of scatterbrained on? Is there work that gets you into that flow state, where you work and you're doing something and it's an hour that's gone by and you don't realize it? And start to identify that work that really energizes you, that you really enjoy, that gets you into that flow state. And again, whether that's work at your job, or those are activities that you do at home on your free time, gardening or Tai Chi or whatever it is. And put together that list of what it is that really makes you feel the best and gets you into that flow state. And this is the great place when you can start to mine for your goals and really say, I enjoy doing this type of work. Wonder what I can build on that and where I can do with that and where I can go. Another great activity is mind mapping. And you could use this on its own, or you could go back to something like the values that you put together, and you could take one of the values and you could see sort of the practical applications of the value. And I have an example I'll show you in a second. But with this mind mapping, what you do is if you've never done it, take a blank piece of paper, write a word, like a value, in the middle of that page, and then start to write words and terms around it that you relate to that. It could be a value or it could be a particular kind of work. And fill out the page. Just write all that you can think of. And then when you're done, look over it, and what are the 3 or 4 terms that really just kind of pop out at you? Things that you just like, you just identify those right off the bat. Circle those. And what do they tell you? What do they mean? What are they saying to you? Um, and so as an example, um, you could, one of your values for work values could have been student success. Student success is, of course, very important if you're working in an academic library or any kind of library, really. And you could say, well, I want to know, so student success is important to me, but how could I go about influencing student success, or how would that look, what would that look like in my daily work life? So you could write student success into the middle of this page. You could put your terms all around it. Okay, and then what you can do is, look through those and what terms pop out at you. And let's say, terms, like the terms that pop out at you are, performing good research, using and finding information, and creating knowledge. Okay, and then you look at those and you say, well, what does that mean to me? What are those words and terms? What are they telling me? And you can say, well, really that is, um, information literacy. So now we have a basis. You can say, all right, well, one of the ways then that I could influence student success, and one of the things that has a meaning to me as far as helping students is in information literacy. All right, so there's a great place where we can start to look at, well, what kind of big goals could we get out of information literacy that would take us and help us to live out this goal of student success through information literacy. And you could do this as many times as you need to and want. You could come up with 5, 10, 15 terms or ideas or concepts, whatever. Just keep doing this. These things that work for you, that you find are helpful in your activities. And all of these activities could take a couple of days, or it could take a couple of months. Depends on how much time you want to spend on this, and really, really want to focus on what you want to do. But once you get, again, these big ideas like information literacy, once you get those concepts that are really important to you, and that you think you could do something with, then just do a brain dump. I mean, just sit down and think about, again, going back with our example of information literacy, what are all the things that you could do that would relate to information literacy? And just, again, no filter, just write down everything that comes to your mind. And those could be small projects that could take a couple of hours or a couple of days, or big projects that would take 5 years. Just write it all down. Don't stop and think, well, I can't do this because I don't have the kind of money to do that. You can get a grant to get that money. Don't stop and think, I don't have the skills to do that. You can learn skills. Just write down everything. There's no wall here. There's no limits, no everything. Just write down everything that you can think of that would relate to that term that you could do to accomplish in that area. So for information literacy, we could write down things like information literacy consultant, become a nationally recognized information literacy scholar, or develop a new framework for information literacy as examples of things that we could do with information literacy. And the next you want to do is you want to narrow this down. So there's a difference between dreams and goals. I used to live in a place where it was this really big skydiving destination. People would come from all over, really all over the world, to this tiny little town in Florida to skydive. And people would ask me, well, would you ever want to skydive? And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'd love to jump out of a plane. Who wouldn't? And then they would talk about, well, you can take lessons and do this and that. So, I'm not going to take any lessons. I don't want to spend any time. Like, I just want to go jump out of a plane. So what's the difference between a dream and a goal? A dream is something that would be really great if it happened, but you're not willing to work for it. A goal is something you're willing to work for and work hard for to be able to achieve. And so anything that's a dream that you're not willing to work hard for and willing to do, just go ahead and cross that off the list, because it's never going to get done. So you might say, well, we wrote down information literacy consultant. You might say, well, that's really more of a dream. I don't want to travel that much. I don't want to be away from my family because that's a priority to me. I don't want to start my own business. So go ahead and you just cross that off, because it's something that we want to pursue. So now you've got your these list of goals here. Now work on mocking up a plan. What would it look like in 5 years if you were to achieve these goals? What do you think some of the big milestones would be and steps would be to achieve this? And mock up a rough 5-year plan of this, and come back to this and really look these over and think about them, tweak them as necessary, think about them some more, because this is kind of our final step in preparing our options and think about where we want to go and what looks like it might be the best fit for us and the most interesting thing for us. Okay. Because after we get done with that, then what we're going to do is, this is the moment of truth. Now we're going to select our big goals from this mock-up and from this plan. And you could select big goals for each area of your life and work. You could select one big overarching goal and have some goals and projects in each area that would work you towards that big goal. All right, but when you decide on the goal, write them down, read them over, and what the goals that you choose, they should excite you a lot and scare you just a little bit. That's how you know they're big goals. And if you're not sufficiently excited or scared, then you may need to go back a few steps and develop a bigger goal. I mean, really think big here. And for this, example, we're working with information literacy. We might say, after a lot of thinking and a lot of deliberation, we want to become a nationally recognized information literacy scholar. That's a big goal. I got a little scared just saying that, and I'm not even going to do it, So that kind of thing, really set this and really aim big and really aim high. And, just get your heart rate up just a little bit when you write that down and when you say that. Okay. And the next step here on our OP plan is we're going to plan. And it's important, once you select your goal, don't waste time looking back. You're not going that way, you're going forward. So many people never move toward their goals because they're too busy wondering if they made the right choice, what might have happened if they went in another direction. But all that looking back is just wasted energy. Not to say you can't change your course or alter your goals as you move along and discover something's not working right. We need to tweak this a little bit. That's perfectly fine. But life is too short for regrets. Just keep moving forward and moving towards your goals. And what we want to do next to start planning is develop a time frame here. So we have our big goal, becoming this nationally recognized information literacy scholar. So what are the various projects and steps we would need to take in order to achieve this? And break these down into multi-year things that might take you 5 years or 3 years. And then what would take you, and then break those down. So if it's a big 5-year goal, let's say you're going to publish a book in 5 years. What would year 4 look like, year 3, year 2, year 1? And then focus on that first year that's coming up, and how would you break that down quarterly? Every 3 months, what would you need to accomplish that 1-year goal? And then the idea is, of course, we're going to keep breaking that down, breaking those quarterly goals down into monthly goals, to weekly goals, and down into what we're going to do in our daily work. But this is the first step here on taking this big, huge thing and breaking it down into something that's very small and that's very manageable, that we can complete. And you just do these things step by step by step, and all of a sudden, you've got a huge thing you've just done. We also want to prioritize. We might have multiple big goals here. We want to prioritize these goals. Some things you might say, this is really important to me. This is the big thing I really want to do. So that's going to be something I work on every single day. There might be other things you work on a couple of times a week, some things a couple of times a month. But it's important to do that prioritizing, so that way, again, we're breaking all this work down into what eventually is going to be our daily task list. So we want to know what it is that we want to work on, what's important to us, and how we can get there and how we need to plan our work day. So now we come back to SMART goals. So, I put these things down in the beginning. I said they were kind of dumb, but they do have a place here, and this is where SMART goals come in. Again, let's say you wanted to implement an information literacy plan on your campus. right? Well, this is where you're going to need SMART goals. You're going to need to say, by this date, I need to develop a draft plan. By this date, I need to send it out to some people to get feedback. By this date, I need to get finalized so I can meet with the college curriculum committees, then the university curriculum committees, all that sort of stuff. So this is where the SMART goals are really valuable in that they take you to that big goal. And this is where they come in and are important. And you want to have a review process built into this as well. And some people review every day. Some people review weekly or monthly. But definitely you would want to review at least quarterly and yearly to see where you are on your path to achieving those goals. So if we've got our quarterly goals to achieve, then let's say every week or every month we review that. How are we doing? Are we on track to get to that and reach that quarterly goal? Are there the things that are working really well for us? If so, then how can we keep that going and maximize that? Are there things that aren't working very well? If so, how do we go and fix that and make that better so that it works better for us in order to achieve those goals? But that review process is really important because it makes sure that you're on track and you're doing the things you need to do. Sometimes we might say a goal will take us a month to achieve that particular step. And then it turns out it takes us a week. All right, so now we need to, kind of reconfigure our time frame and our time plan. Then the opposite can happen. This is going to take me a month. It might take 6 months. You never know. So that review process is important to make sure that we're staying on the right track and we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. Okay. It's important to remember that most people overestimate what they can do in a year, but they underestimate what they can do in 5 years or 10 years. So don't sell yourself short. Really, again, go big. And to be an nationally recognized information literacy scholar, you might say, well, I could, again, implement an information literacy plan across the curriculum on my campus. I could write a book on information literacy. I could organize an information literacy symposium. And I'm going to say, hey, why don't you just do all three? Because you have so much time, and it's amazing how much you can get done when you're focused and you're driven and you have a goal and you're working towards something. What you can get done in a span of 5 years, definitely in a whole decade. Amazing things have been done, and you could do that as well. So don't sell yourself short in on what you choose to do, because you can do a lot more than you think you can in a 5-year span. Okay. So investing. So now this comes to the point where we're going to do the actual work to get us to these goals. And you're probably thinking, Jason, I actually like to sleep. So, when in the world am I going to actually get around to doing all these things that you've now convinced me that I need to do? Being productive is a lot easier than you think. And I gave a webinar back in May on some productivity tips, and I won't go over all of those things here. In the handout that I'll send you, there's a link to that webinar and to all of the handouts for that webinar. So you can review that. If you ever have any questions, you can always email me and ask me. But a few things that I want to talk about when it comes to working towards our goals. Motivation is fleeting. If you're happy one day, something good happens and it makes you happy, you wouldn't count on that feeling to keep you happy for 6 weeks. It's a fleeting feeling, and the same thing with motivation or with inspiration as well. This is a fleeting sort of thing. So what you need to do is you need to set up habits and routines that help you keep going. And so that's part of what I mean by taking action, by being able to set up a process that allows you to do the work that you need to do to achieve your goals. The other part of taking action is once you've decided something, once you've got that inspiration, that motivation going, take some immediate action. Let's say you decided, yes, you wanted to write that book on information literacy, You say, I'm going to do this. Sit down. You could just use a pencil and a piece of paper and write out a quick abstract, or give a real rough outline of what the book would look like, chapter titles or whatever. Just take some kind of action that you've taken a step forward. Oftentimes I've said, oh, well, I'm going to do this. I'm really motivated and inspired to do it. And then 3 weeks later, it's like, oh, I wanted to do that back then, but now I didn't. I didn't take any action, didn't have any follow through on that. So when you decide something, take that action to do it and develop those kinds of processes that is going to help you do the work that you need to do. So again, you need to create the right environment consisting of good habits and routines to get the work done. And again, I talk about this in the productivity webinar, but having those daily habits, daily routines of when you sit down and when you do your work and when you check your email and when you do those kinds of things, they put your brain in a right state, they put your mind in a right state to do the work. If you always know that you're going to sit down at this space, at this desk and write, then when you sit down at that desk in that space, your mind goes into this writing mode, and you're going to sit down and you're going to do a better job of writing. To-do lists, we make a lot of to-do lists, and generally they're kind of bad because we just lump a whole bunch of things together, and they're not prioritized. They don't have the kind of important work that we need to do is lumped in with like silly little work. So what we want to do is we make to-do lists that highlight the important work that we're doing that takes us towards those big goals. And we want to make sure that we work on the most important projects and the most important work in the day first. And we want to get those lists done actually the day before. So the last thing you do before you go to bed, or the last thing you do before you leave work, is to create that to-do list for the next day. So when you come in, you can just start working without having to sit around and think about what it is that I want to do today. And the next thing you know, an hour and a half's gone. If you get that work done beforehand, then that way when you come in, you're all ready to get to work. Distractions, and we live in an age now where we have all these distractions. We've got all kinds of things beeping at us and vibrating at us and doing all sort of stuff. We got email, we've got to go look at this new picture and this and that. We need to manage those distractions, and there's ways we can do that from how we set up our phone and what kind of alerts we have on our phone, to turning off our phone, to there are website blockers we can put in our browsers that help us to manage these distractions so that we're focused on what it is, the work that we need to do. And finally, we want to be a pro. Professionals show up to work every single day, and they do the work they need to do, regardless of whether they feel like it or not. Show up every day, do the work that's important to you that gets you to those big goals. Go deep into that work too. Don't just remain shallow while on the surface. That's really easy to do, but really go deep. And don't quit. Keep going. There's going to be rough times. There's going to be hard times. Keep going. And no excuses. Get rid of any excuses that you have. Professionals don't have excuses. They just go and they do the work that needs to be done. It's also important to have goal reminders. So these goals that you have, and I've done this before, I write down all these goals and these plans, and they're inside a folder, inside a folder, inside a folder on my hard drive, and I don't see them again until I go in and I start cleaning out my hard drive. Take these big goals that you have, write them down, and put them where you'll see them every single day, whether that's on your computer screen, it's the wall above your PC, it's wherever, big whiteboard. Put them down, and every time you make a decision about work that you're going to do, how you're going to plan your day, look at those goals should be right there in front of you so that you know if I say yes to this, does this move me towards my goals? If no, then I shouldn't say yes to this. I shouldn't do this. And accountability, having an accountability partner is really great. You can work together with somebody in your life, or at your job, at your library, that you can go in and you're each other's partners, and you get together. I said I was going to do this week and I achieved it. That's great. I didn't get there because of this. And it's a way to build in that accountability. When you have to answer to somebody, it can be hard. It's a lot harder to go on Facebook and spend 3 hours looking at baby pictures than it is when you don't have to answer to somebody. If you can't find an accountability partner, a lot of people will use social media as an accountability partner. Let's say you wanted to get into shape. People will tweet or post on Facebook or Instagram the workout that they did that day, which means if they didn't do a workout, then they say, I didn't do a workout today. Or they'll post maybe what they ate. That way, if you want to eat those Oreos, you got to remember, well, I got to post this onto Facebook. And there's always that one person who's going to never let you forget you ate those Oreos. So having that accountability in there is really important, as well as those goal reminders. Okay, and enjoy. You really need to enjoy the process. The work at times is going to be hard. It's going to be frustrating, even if it's value driven. It's towards something that you really care about and prioritize in your life. There's just going to be times when you're aggravated and you want to give up. But overall, you really need to enjoy the process. You need to enjoy the work that you're doing. If you don't enjoy the work, you're never going to achieve the goal. If you have a goal that to write this book on information literacy, and you don't like to research and you don't like to write, you're never going to write that book. Or by the time you get done writing the book, you're going to be such a miserable person. You wish you'd never done it. Whatever rewards come out of it are not going to be very significant compared to the pain that you felt. And along the lines, celebrate milestones, celebrate achievements, and reward yourself. I just read an article this morning on how can you go about rewarding yourself without either spending money or indulging in junk food. And it got me to thinking, what are the ways that we can reward ourselves? And that might be an important thing to sit down and jot down some ways you can reward yourself for achieving something. It might be going out to dinner, or it might be watching a movie guilt-free on Netflix, or it might just be I'm going to sit here and just look at the wall, or to read something, or whatever. How would you go about rewarding yourself? And don't ever forget to reward yourself. Celebrate those successes and keep track of your successes. Again, when the work gets hard and you don't think you can go on, look back at those successes and say, look how far I've come. I can keep going farther and get to the end. And finally, enjoy the journey and detach from the outcome. We all like to achieve goals. It gives us a great feeling of satisfaction and accomplishment. But being too attached to the outcomes can have negative consequences. You can become so attached to achieving the goal that you lose track of why you were working towards it in the first place, what you're getting out of it. Effective goals, those great goals, big goals, are about who you become on your way to achieving them. If you never become a nationally recognized information literacy scholar, but you have a positive impact on your school's curriculum and on student learning, and you help other librarians do the same, then you've succeeded a great deal. You've succeeded very mightily in your work, and you've done a good job. So don't become so attached to the outcome that you kind of lose sight of the forest for the trees. Detach a little bit about it and think about who you're becoming on this journey to achieving your goals. Okay. Here is the link, and I'm going to put this in the chat window, this link here. And this has got a handout to some resources and some more information about what we've talked about today. It also has the PowerPoint slides are going to be there if you wanted to look at those. It's got a write-up. It's got some links to some other resources out there on the web and some other goal planning and goal setting material. And the video for this, like I said, will be embedded on that page once it becomes available. And so are there any questions? You can just type them into the chat box if you have any questions. What I'm also going to do right now is I'm going to paste, this is the assessment. So if you take a few minutes when we're done here. Like I said, it's about 3 or 4 questions to complete for the assessment. I really appreciate it. Oh, sorry. One of the things too, and I talk about this in the productivity webinar, is a lot of people want to say, well, I don't have time to do this, or I don't have time to do that. That's one of those areas where you need to be really honest with yourself and sit down and keep track of what you do during the day. This is a great experiment. There's apps out there you can do this with, or you can just do it with a piece of paper and a pencil. Is just write down everything that you do during the day, like what time you get to work, how long, what time you started checking email, what time you stopped, what time you started going on Facebook, what time you got off, what time you spent in the meetings, all this sort of stuff, what time you left work. And you do that for a couple of weeks, and you really get to see where you spend your time. And so you get to see within that schedule of your days what stuff you can cut out and what's a lot of junk that's not important. And then make room and make time for those really big important things. If it's important to you, you'll be able to find the time and make the time to accomplish those goals and those work. So if anybody has any questions, you can put them there in the chat box. Otherwise, I'm just gonna kind of bebop and scat here. Probably everybody's, I'm sure, tired of hearing me talk by now. And I know we talked a lot about, or I talked a lot about, just enjoying the journey or who you become on the journey and detaching from the outcomes. It took me a long time to realize the expression, it's not the destination, it's the journey. It's the journey, not the destination. What that actually meant. And I used to say, well, that's just by people who don't have a job and they live in their parents' basement. But it really is important when you think about planning this, is who you want to become and where you want to go. That's really the big thing about goals, is who you're going to become and what you're going to develop and learn as you achieve these big goals, or as you work towards them. Whether you actually get to them or not, you've done a lot of good work and achieved a lot in who you've become and how you've changed yourself for the better. Doesn't look like we have any questions. So you've got that link to the handout. Like I said, you've got a link there to the assessment. You take a few minutes to complete that. I was going to mention what we have coming up okay, what are your thoughts about online tools and apps like Toggle to journal? Yeah, so when I was talking about keeping track of the work that you do, Toggle is one of the things that you can use. It's an app, and it's really cool. You can just you hit start. You just name the activity, like checking email, and you hit start, and it keeps track of how long you spend doing it. And it's one of those things where you can put on your desktop and on your phone, on any kind of tablet and device that you use. And so it's really easy to work, and it really gives you an accurate timing of how long you spend doing certain things. I think the thing about online tools and apps is, to me, there's a return on investment with those, and how long I have to spend learning how to use them and remembering to use them, it needs to be less than what I'm going to get out of it. Right, so if I'm going to get a lot of great things out of it, I'll spend the time learning it. But a lot of times that's not the case. Like, this is a really cool app that's out there. I'm like, well, I already have something that does that, or I just don't need that. It's just more of work to go and learn that. So I think that's a personal thing. I think there's a lot of great tools out there. In the productivity handout, which is linked from that handout, that link I just sent you, I do highlight a lot of great apps and online tools that are out there. That's up to you to figure out what it is that you like and what you want to do, and what makes the most sense for you. But I think there are a lot of good things out there if you're really struggling and need some help, or you just like that technology to using that and getting that. There's a lot of really great tools out there for you to use. But again, like I said, it's personal depending on how long it's going to take for me, how long it takes me to learn the new app. Is that really going to be a good use of my time or not? Okay. Welcome. Anything else? We've got 3 programs coming up. I'll mention, and over the next couple of weeks, you'll see some emails going out about these. In January 31st, we have a program called 20 Apps in 60 Minutes. which will talk about some really great apps. Some of them are productivity, so if you're interested in learning about some new apps, then you can attend this online program that we have. We have How to Think and Act Like a UX Librarian Part 2. This is one of the most popular programs we put on, was How to Think and Act Like a UX Librarian. This is going to be a second part to that. That's on February 21st. And then on March 7th, we have Free Graphics, Audio, and Video for Education. And so I'll be sending out more information as we get closer to those dates. I'll also be sending out a call for presentations if you're interested in doing an online program on whatever topic. Probably in the next couple of weeks, I'll be sending out some calls for those. So it's a pretty quick and easy application process, and we'd love to hear from you and what you'd be interested in presenting on. So if there's no other questions, I want to say thank you all for taking the time to join me. If you do have any questions later on you think about, email me. My email is up there on the screen, jason.martin@mtsu.edu. I want to thank Muriel for her great help, for Elois for getting all this set up, and for the ACRL ULS Professional Development Committee. They did always a great job getting all this set up and facilitated. So I hope you learned a lot. I hope this is helpful for you. It's the New Year's here. Set some really great goals for yourself and go out and achieve and do some really great stuff. All right? Thank you very much. Have a great day.